Over the last few weeks, I've been working on my latest book, in fact, finishing the book, which is going to be on the anti-Sicilians for black. So this covers all the lines where white does not go in for an open Sicilian. So things like the Rossolimo, the Grand Prix attack, the Alapin, that kind of thing. So this is basically the book version of my Chessable course that came out last year. But I've basically rewritten it. The lines are roughly the same as the Chessable course, but with some additions. I've incorporated a lot of suggestions from viewers on Chessable. I've changed the order of things. I mean, it really had to be completely rewritten for the book format. And there are also a couple of extra chapters as well to cover, well, a few things that people thought I'd omitted. So, for example, when I submitted my proposal to the publishers, they said, well, it looks fine, but you haven't included 2A3. Really? Do I have to give a recommendation against this move? I mean, basically, you can play practically anything with black against this, and it's going to be okay. But that might be the problem, that I think when somebody plays a move like this, you know, quite left field, then often players feel that they can get away with something pretty wacky themselves and they forget the basics. So you do have to have something in mind. I mean, one thing which I think is very reasonable is just to play e6 and then just go d5. Why not? You know, plant your flag in the middle of the board. Why not? Looks fine for black. But when I researched this move, actually, it's quite interesting that I found that Carlsen has played this, Nakamura, Mamedyarov. I mean, online, you know, when somehow you've just sort of get things going, something a bit different. So online blitz games mainly, but it's not quite as bad as it looks, basically. I mean, my recommendation against this is going to be g6, with the simple idea that if b4, then bishop g7 just looks like a really good move because you gain a tempo by attacking the rook. And that usually works out very well for black. But what I want to do here is show you one of the ways in which white often plays this. And so I'm looking at a game between Marco Riehle, who's a German FM, and Dmitry Andreikin, who is a seriously strong Russian grandmaster. Now, this was a blitz game, a titled Tuesday blitz tournament game. And yes, Marco Riehle, if you look in the database, has the dubious distinction of perhaps being the most prolific player with 2A3. And one of the things he likes to do is play h4. So trying to claim that g6 is kind of a fatal weakness by black, and white can now exploit that by punting the h-pawn. Again, it's not quite as stupid as it looks. You know, this can be a bit annoying. Sometimes white can take here and mess up black's pawn. Sometimes you can, you know, after d3 push it to h6, and, you know, it can be quite reasonable. But Andreikin plays an excellent move here, which is my recommendation in the book. Knight f6. So I really like this provocative move. So one, you're bringing out a piece, and white has only played pawn moves so far. And it fits with quite a lot of my recommendations in the Anti-Sicilians course as a whole. So, for example, against the Rossolimo, then knight f6 is my recommendation. And you might think that it's going to be troublesome for black that this knight gets pushed around, but not at all. Excuse me, because white only makes pawn moves in pushing this knight around, but actually black's knight is very agile and it brings out a piece. There are other variations where this is used as well. So, for example, against this version of the Grand Prix attack, this very modest bishop move, my recommendation is knight f6 here. Again, white can push this knight, but actually it just moves, sometimes even to g4, and then once the pawn is at e5, it can be broken down with d6, and black has a very nice position there. And in any case, black is going to play d5 and hit out at white's centre. So yes, I really like this move because it fits in with lots of the other systems. It's a very logical move. You develop a piece and you provoke white. So immediately white has a problem with this pawn. It also discourages h5 as well. So in this game, this blitz game, Riehle played e5. Right, well, it's obviously a test of knight f6. The knight is going to move and maybe this h-pawn will advance. But here's the point. The knight goes to h5. Now this looks a bit weird. In fact, the knight stands very well on h5. Okay, what happens if this knight is attacked? Well, okay, let's have a look at bishop e2. In fact, this knight can just be left here. In this position, black has a tremendous counterattack. If the queen goes back, then d6 breaks down this central pawn, and you've got two bishops, and with the knight on the outpost, great position. Riehle, in another game, played g4 here. This was against Hans Niemann. This is fun. And black has an excellent position already. So this pawn has gone from e5. g4 was really loose. Black's development is absolutely superb. White is a bit of a mess. And that's already, I would say, a winning position for black, actually. Although Riehle managed to draw that game. But yeah, it's a blitz game. Anything can happen. But that's a winning position for black. In this game, Riehle played knight f3. Wow, a bit of sound development instead of the outlandish g4 or bishop e2. So knight c6. So now we're going to see that black just attacks this advanced pawn. Bishop g7. This pawn is already in trouble. You can see it lacks defenders. I mean, if queen e2, it's a bit ugly, blocking the bishop. This pawn can be broken down and castles, and I would say white is already in huge trouble here. Riehle played g4 instead, pushing the knight. The knight is actually safe here, and this pawn is now really weak. So for example, if d3, that knight just steps back to e6. Now, if you've seen any of my recommendations against the Rossolimo with this 3 knight f6, then you'll recognise that this knight actually often ends up on e6 after going via f6, d5, c7 and then to e6. And e6 is a beautiful square for the knight, looking at the outpost on d4 as well as the f4 square. So that's already very nice for black. So Riehle played d4. That got taken. Bishop takes knight. Okay, the nimble knight is eliminated. But this is fantastic for black. I mean, if this is taken, then you can imagine the queen coming to a5 to hassle this pawn and also look at the e5 pawn as well. So b4 played. So that means that black can't play queen a5. Nevertheless, d6, a really simple move, breaking down this pawn, and of course that lets out the bishop. b5, knight d4. Okay, looks nice, nice pin. Bishop g2, black castles, gets the king out of difficulty. Of course, pawn takes pawn would lead to, well, disaster in various ways. But yes, queen takes pawn check looks pretty good. So white castled. And, well, I mean, before we go any further, I think we can see that black just has a fantastic position here. Just look at white's pawn structure. I mean, this is the basic thing. Have you seen a more ragged pawn structure than that? All over the shop. And compare with black's. Okay, we have 4 regular pawns on the king side, protecting the king. We have 2 regular pawns here. The pawn on c3 could be very useful later on, but that's a beautiful pawn structure and very nice pieces as well. This pin is obviously extremely annoying. I mean, this is already strategically a winning position. I think in the opening, I think there are sort of 3 main opening principles. Claim the centre, develop your pieces, get castled. But there's a 4th, actually, which is to come out of the opening with a healthy pawn structure. Black has done that, white hasn't. This is a wreck. Let's see how the game finished. Well, e5 pushes the bishop, supports the knight. It's possible just to take the pawn in the next move. Black is a winning position already. Oh, there's also e4. Forgot about that, of course. It's just winning material, just exploiting the pin. Yes, I mean, I think black could have played this already. Well, Andreikin played queen f6, which does the same job. There's too much on this knight, and this is a winning position for black. So the game went bishop takes, pawn, and Andreikin just mopped up. He now has an extra piece and a completely winning position. Let's just go through the final moves. Didn't take too long. I know this is a blitz game, but still, I think black's play was very sound and very logical. And we're going to get to the end of the game very shortly. Rook takes c2. There we go. With an extra piece, that is utterly winning for black. So very nice exploitation of black's advantages there from Dmitry Andreikin. And just coming back here, yeah, 2a3. Let's not get too excited about this. g6 is just a sound move, and knight f6. Very typical for anti-Sicilians. Very nice provocative move. And actually, this just stretches white's position here with that pawn on e5. If black isn't losing the piece, and black isn't, then white's structure is just pretty abysmal. I mean, what do these pawn moves have that connects them? Not a lot, actually. So there you go. If you want more details of that, and indeed much more besides in these anti-Sicilian systems, then the book, it will be coming out. It should be at the start of the summer. I'll keep you posted on when it will actually be published. In the meantime, you can always buy the Chessable course if you prefer to have it in that format. And indeed, the Chessable course is on sale right now. So do check out Chessable. My Kalashnikov course and the Anti-Sicilians course are on sale right now. Also, I've got a live broadcast coming up on Tuesday where I'll be doing a little bit more candidates preview material. So do check that out. And of course, just tune in. You can ask me loads of questions. And yeah, we can talk about anything you like, basically. So Tuesday, 1800 hours Central European time, 5 PM UK. And well, you can work out the rest. Thanks for watching.